There is an uncomfortable truth many men are sensing, but few are willing to articulate out loud. The sudden "I'm ready now" phase that appears in many women after 35 is not always what it looks like on the surface. For years, these women may have prioritized career growth, personal freedom, travel, self-discovery, and casual or low-investment relationships. Commitment was postponed, often framed as a conscious, empowered choice. Then, seemingly overnight, the language shifts, marriage becomes important, stability becomes attractive. A peaceful family life suddenly feels urgent, even non-negotiable. The critical question is not whether a woman has the right to change her mind. Of course she does. The real question men must ask is where that change is coming from. Is it rooted in a deep internal transformation, new values, a matured capacity for attachment, and a genuine desire to build something with a specific man? Or is it primarily driven by external pressure, shrinking options, and fear of an uncertain future? These two motivations may look identical on the surface, but they lead to radically different outcomes. When men fail to distinguish between them, they risk the most expensive mistake of all: investing their time, energy, loyalty, and resources into a relationship that does not return emotional connection, desire, or respect. In other words, placing their entire life into an asset that does not yield emotional dividends. This is not about morality, blame, or shaming women for their choices. It is about pattern recognition, clarity, and decision-making based on reality rather than hope, loneliness, or the unconscious urge to play the role of savior. What we are witnessing today is a noticeable wave of women over 35 declaring that they now want a good man, someone stable, reliable, and emotionally available. On paper, this sounds flattering. But men must pause and ask a harder question: are you being chosen for who you are as a man, or because you conveniently fit the role of provider and protector at a moment when time feels scarce and alternatives are limited? Being selected under urgency is very different from being desired freely. This content is not meant to discourage connection or promote cynicism. Its purpose is to dissect the psychological forces at play when women cross this age threshold, and to show why this shift is often more complex and more pragmatic than the word maturity suggests. Only by understanding these dynamics can a man choose with logic instead of fear, and to do that properly. We first have to confront the biological reality that quietly triggers much of this sudden readiness, which we will explore next. In their 20s and early 30s, most women experience time as if it were an infinite resource. Popular culture reinforces this illusion relentlessly. Media narratives encourage women to focus on themselves, build careers, collect experiences, and delay commitment without consequence. Motherhood and family are presented as optional features that can be activated whenever one feels emotionally ready. Biology is treated as an inconvenience, something technology, mindset, or optimism will eventually override. Then, somewhere between 35 and 37, reality intrudes. The biological clock, long dismissed as outdated fear-mongering, suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. Egg quality and quantity decline sharply, and this decline is largely irreversible. Doctors stop speaking in abstractions and begin discussing concrete risks: higher miscarriage rates, fertility complications, genetic abnormalities, and the clinical label of geriatric pregnancy. No amount of confidence or social media reassurance changes these medical facts. This collision with reality often produces anxiety rather than clarity. What looks like emotional readiness is frequently biological panic translated into relational urgency. Timelines appear suddenly. Conversations about children and commitment accelerate unnaturally. Phrases like, "I'm not young anymore," or "I don't want to waste time," enter the dialogue early. To the man on the receiving end, this can feel like intense interest or serious intent, but in many cases, it is not passion for him, it is fear of time running out. The trigger is often external. A close friend struggling with IVF, a coworker announcing a complicated pregnancy, a formerly confident single woman, now visibly lonely. These moments force a rapid reevaluation of life strategy. The result is not a romantic awakening, but a strategic pivot. The man is no longer simply a partner to be loved. He becomes a solution to a delayed crisis. He is, in effect, being recruited to resolve a problem that was ignored when it felt distant. This is where the risk becomes invisible but severe. When a relationship is formed primarily to achieve an outcome, children, status, security. The emotional bond is secondary or absent. Once the outcome is secured, the motivation that drove the relationship fades. Men often sense this years later, when affection cools and intimacy feels transactional. To understand why this dynamic intensifies after 35, we must next examine how a woman's position in the dating market changes and how that shift reshapes her choices. In her 20s, a woman typically experiences the dating world from a position of abundance. Attention flows easily. Messages are frequent, invitations arrive without effort, free drinks, social validation, and endless matches on dating apps create a subtle but powerful assumption this is normal. And it will always be this way. In that environment, she is almost always the chooser, rarely the one being evaluated. Men compete, she filters. After 35, the landscape changes quietly but dramatically. High-value men in their mid-30s to mid-40s, those with resources, confidence, and the option to start families are no longer scarce. They often have broader access to younger women who bring fewer emotional scars, less accumulated resentment, and more flexibility. Whether one agrees with this reality or not, it shapes behavior. For many women, the phone grows quieter. The quantity and quality of attention decline at the same time. The men who once generated excitement but avoided responsibility are now gone. Some never wanted commitment. Others married earlier. What remains are men who were previously dismissed as too safe, too boring, or lacking emotional volatility. The shift can feel humiliating, even shocking. And so, the narrative changes. Traits once overlooked suddenly become virtues. Reliability is praised. Calmness is reframed as maturity. Stability becomes attractive because excitement is no longer available. This is where men must be brutally honest with themselves. If a woman who showed no interest when she had many options now expresses enthusiasm when those options have disappeared, the question is unavoidable. Did you evolve, or did her alternatives vanish? Are you being chosen, or are you simply the last viable candidate left standing? Being the default winner is not the same as being desired. Gratitude for safety does not equal attraction. Appreciation is not passion. Many men accept relationships where they are valued for convenience, not chemistry, over time. This erodes masculine self-respect. Living with someone who tolerates you because life is easier with you is a slow psychological death. To understand why this lack of genuine desire is so hard to reverse, we need to look deeper at how past romantic experiences shape a woman's ability to bond. That is where the next layer of this dynamic reveals itself. There is a comforting myth that experience automatically makes people wiser in love. In reality, long-term exposure to short, intense romances often does the opposite. A decade of active dating, emotional highs, breakups, and replacements trains the nervous system to treat relationships as temporary and interchangeable. Instead of deepening the capacity for attachment, it conditions the mind to keep one foot out the door. Over time, this creates what psychologists quietly recognize as choice overload. When someone has spent years believing that a better option is always one swipe or one conversation away, patience erodes. Difficulty becomes a signal to exit rather than an invitation to build. Emotional endurance weakens. The ability to stay present during conflict fades. Bonding, like adhesive tape repeatedly pulled and reapplied, loses its grip with each cycle. After 35, this pattern often manifests as chronic comparison, even when a relationship appears stable on the surface. The mind is crowded with ghosts of the past. Former lovers are mentally stitched together into a fictional composite. One had passion, another had confidence, another had generosity. No real man can compete with this Frankenstein ideal. As a result, the present partner constantly feels slightly insufficient, though no specific accusation is ever voiced. Men sense this as an invisible distance. The woman is polite, cooperative, and practical. Yet something essential is missing. Her affection feels measured. Her commitment feels contractual. The relationship functions, but it does not breathe. What is being exchanged is not admiration or desire, but utility. Resources are traded for presence. Stability is traded for compliance. When genuine emotional capacity has been depleted before a man ever enters the picture, there is nothing he can do to ignite it. He is not failing. He arrived too late. This is why so many men describe feeling like an employee in their own relationship rather than a lover. To see this clearly, we must separate two concepts that are often confused but rarely examined: wanting marriage and wanting you. That distinction is where the truth becomes unavoidable. When men hear a woman say she wants marriage, it is easy to assume that desire includes them by default. This is a dangerous assumption. Wanting marriage and wanting to be with a specific man are psychologically different motivations, even though they often wear the same language. In youth, these two desires usually overlap. A woman in her early 20s tends to imagine building a future because she wants to share life with a particular person. Marriage is a vehicle, not the destination. After 35, that order often reverses. The desire is no longer centered on the man, but on the structure itself. Marriage becomes a framework for safety, social legitimacy, and closure. It answers looming questions about aging, loneliness, and unfinished life scripts. The man, in this case, is not the dream. He is the missing piece required to complete the picture before the window closes. This is how men quietly become solutions rather than partners. They are chosen not because they ignite desire, curiosity, or admiration, but because they are available, stable, and acceptable. They fill a role, they reduce anxiety, they make the future feel less threatening. On the surface, everything appears functional. She shows up, she participates, she agrees. But underneath, the emotional engine is missing. The paradox is cruel but consistent. When someone depends on you for security rather than wanting you for who you are, resentment slowly forms. The dependence creates pressure, not gratitude. Intimacy becomes scheduled. Affection becomes conditional. Expectations multiply. While warmth diminishes, the man is expected to perform, provide, and remain steady. Yet he rarely feels genuinely wanted. Many men sense this but suppress the discomfort. They tell themselves that attraction fades in all relationships, that this is what maturity looks like. But deep down, they know the difference between being loved and being used as an emotional life raft. One nourishes the soul, the other drains it. Understanding this distinction is essential because it allows men to evaluate behavior rather than words, and when behavior is observed carefully, clear patterns emerge, patterns that reveal whether a man is truly desired or merely convenient. In the next part, we will examine the most telling signs that you are not the pilot she dreams of, but the airport she settled for when the flight options ran out. There are moments when a man feels something is off. Even though nothing is overtly wrong, the relationship moves forward, but without fire. Words sound correct, yet energy feels muted. This is often where men ignore their instincts, because the surface story is comforting. But patterns do not lie, and when examined honestly, they reveal whether a man is a genuine desire or merely a contingency plan. One of the clearest signs is a sudden shift in preferences that comes without a believable internal explanation. Traits you have always had, once ignored or dismissed, are now celebrated as virtues. She says she is tired of drama, that she finally understands what really matters. But what often changed is not her values, but her access to men who created those emotions. Stability becomes attractive when excitement is no longer attainable. Another warning sign is urgency that feels mechanical rather than organic. She pushes for rapid exclusivity, children, or long-term planning early on. The language of not wasting time appears quickly. This pressure is not about building intimacy. It is about closing a deal before you notice the lack of chemistry. Love that grows naturally does not need a stopwatch. You may also notice a performance of tradition that feels rehearsed. After years of independence and prioritizing career or nightlife, she suddenly presents herself as the ideal partner, nurturing and accommodating. This version often functions like a demo designed to secure commitment. Once the structure is locked in, the effort fades and the original personality resurfaces. Defensiveness about the past is another signal. Questions are avoided, details are blurred, curiosity is framed as insecurity. The goal is not honesty, but preservation of an image that must remain intact for the plan to succeed. Finally, there is an emotional flatness that is hard to describe. With past partners, she bent rules, made exceptions, and showed enthusiasm. With you, she brings standards, fatigue, and conditions. Her best energy was spent elsewhere. You receive the managerial version. These signs are not meant to provoke fear, but clarity. They exist so men can see reality before making irreversible commitments. The final step is deciding what to do with this awareness, and that responsibility belongs to you alone. That is where we conclude. None of this is an argument against women over 35 seeking happiness, partnership, or love. There are real exceptions: women who have genuinely reflected, transformed, and developed a deeper capacity for intimacy. These women exist. And when they love, it is felt clearly, without pressure or strategy. The problem is not age, it is motivation. And after 35, motivations are far more likely to be mixed, complicated, and quietly driven by fear, disappointment, and the collapse of earlier fantasies. Modern culture sold a powerful promise that you could have everything, in any order, at any time. Biology, however, never agreed to that contract. When the illusion breaks, the cost does not disappear. It is simply transferred. Too often, that cost lands on men who are asked to compensate for years of unrealistic expectations by offering stability without receiving genuine desire in return. The responsibility now lies with you. Keep a cool head. Listen less to declarations and more to behavior. Ask yourself a simple but uncomfortable question: does she want you? Or does she want marriage, children, and social closure with someone acceptable? Do not dismiss her past as irrelevant. Past patterns are the most reliable predictors of future behavior, especially under stress. Time is your ally. Real attraction does not panic. Real love does not rush you into roles. If her intentions are sincere, patience will not threaten the bond. If the relationship is a survival strategy, the mask will slip the moment you resist the script or slow the timeline. Trust your instincts. Men are conditioned to doubt them in the name of being good, understanding, or supportive. But you deserve to be chosen with enthusiasm, not settled for as consolation. You deserve passion, respect, and peace, not obligation disguised as commitment. If this perspective resonates with your experience, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may help another man see what he's been trying not to see. And if you want to understand relationship psychology without losing your self-respect, your time, or your freedom, subscribe to the channel. Ooh.